Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are putting on our hard hats.
Yeah.
We're diving into the really granular details of high-performance computing,
Mm-hmm.
specifically the very sophisticated, very specialized infrastructure that, runs the world's largest AI clusters and supercomputers.
The real engine room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've taken a whole stack of highly technical sources. I mean, this is basically the engineering manual for a modern data center focusing on the HPE ecosystem.
Right.
And we're going to pull out the absolute core nuggets of insight. So forget the marketing slides. We're going straight to the ASICs, the firmware, the cooling loops.
That's right. I think our listener really needs that high-speed shortcut to being fluent in this stuff. So our mission today is to distill the most crucial architectural decisions. We're looking at 4 pillars: extreme speed, foundational security, management, and storage.
Okay.
We want you to walk away from this really understanding the why behind these incredibly complex designs.
And that's where it gets interesting, isn't it? When you look at the why, you see this engineering brilliance just pop out. We're going to cover everything from how a vacuum system stops a flood to how you literally carve the CPU out of the data path.
All to save a few microseconds.
Precious microseconds.
Okay.
Let's unpack this. So when you're dealing with massive AI training, and we're talking models that take weeks, right?
Weeks, sometimes months.
The limiting factor isn't really the speed of a single GPU anymore. It's the communication latency between all the GPUs. So what's that historical bottleneck?
The bottleneck has, well, it's always been the host CPU and the system memory. Traditionally, if one GPU needs to send data to another GPU on a different server, it's a long trip.
Okay, walk me through it.
The data has to travel from the first GPU's memory through the PCIe bus, then it gets processed by the host CPU, written into the main system RAM.
Oh, wow.
Then the network card has to pick it up, send it out, and then you do that entire process in reverse on the other side.
That sounds exhausting just describing it. I mean, that's a huge amount of overhead.
It is.
So what's the mechanism that just cuts out that entire round trip?
The mechanism is called GPU Direct RDMA. That's Remote Direct Memory Access.
IGMA. Right.
And what's so fascinating is that the network adapter is basically authorized to interact directly with the GPU memory on a remote node.
So it talks directly to the GPU.
Directly. It allows the network interface card to read and write GPU memory, completely bypassing the host CPU and the system RAM.
Bypassing the CPU, it feels like we're cheating physics a little bit, but that must be where the real performance gains are.
Exactly. The impact is just enormous. It drastically reduces communication latency, sometimes by orders of magnitude, and it frees up the host CPU to do other things. For large-scale distributed training where you have thousands of GPUs all talking at once, this mechanism is absolutely non-negotiable.
But if you introduce a mechanism that bypasses the CPU, the one component that's traditionally responsible for security checks and memory management, are you maybe introducing new risks just to save those microseconds?
That is a really important question, and it's a trade-off.
Okay.
It optimizes for speed, for sure, but it requires very careful system design to make sure those direct memory access channels are strictly controlled. The whole environment has to be purpose-built for trust and performance.
So you can't just drop this into any old system.
Not at all. It's highly specialized.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Let's talk about connecting to the outside world. So if you have a high-performance interconnect like HPE Slingshot running at, 200 GBE?
Right, extreme speeds.
How do you connect that proprietary environment to just standard off-the-shelf gear, like a storage array that only speaks standard 100 gig Ethernet?
This is a classic integration challenge. You really want to avoid having dedicated, expensive gateways or translation cards in the middle.
They just add complexity and another point of failure.
Exactly. So what's crucial for Slingshot is that the interoperability is built right into the hardware itself.
How does the hardware manage that jump from 200 down to 100 without a middleman?
So the Slingshot switch ports, they're built around something called the Rosetta ASIC.
An ASIC. So a custom chip designed for this one specific task.
Precisely. And that ASIC supports standard Ethernet auto-negotiation.
Ah.
So a 200 gig port on the Slingshot switch can automatically sense the connection speed of that storage array and just drop down to operate reliably a 100 GBE mode.
That's a huge deal for architects, I imagine.
It's massive. It means you can have direct connectivity. It removes a whole layer of complexity from the design.
Okay, moving from speed to the absolute requirement of security.
Right.
When we look at foundational components, specifically in HPE ProLiant Gen 11 servers.
Yeah.
What is that single, non-negotiable security part that validates the server's code before it even powers on?
That component is the silicon root of trust. The name really tells you everything.
A root of trust baked into the silicon.
Exactly. It's a layer of trust that's physically part of the server's microcontroller, so it's immutable. It can't be changed.
So it's not software, this is hardware.
100% hardware.
So what's its specific function in those first critical seconds?
Its crucial function is validation. It's solely responsible for validating the ILO 6 firmware code.
And ILO is the integrated lights out, the management controller.
Right, the controller that runs even when the server is off. The silicon root of trust makes sure that the ILO firmware is authentic, that it hasn't been tampered with, say, in a supply chain attack, before it allows the server to proceed.
That sounds like a really critical line of defense against some very sophisticated attacks. You're securing the management layer first before anything else.
Absolutely. If that integrity check fails, the server simply will not power on, period. It prevents any unauthorized or malicious code from ever executing.
Foundational integrity, I like that. Now, let's pivot from security to physical safety. I find this fascinating. HPC systems like the HPE Cray EX, they use extensive liquid cooling.
A lot of liquid.
So if you have hundreds of gallons of coolant running through a system, what's the biggest nightmare and how do you handle the risk of a small leak?
The nightmare is, of course, coolant spraying out onto live electronics. It's dangerous, it's expensive.
A total disaster.
A total disaster. And the solution they use in the secondary cooling loop is brilliant. It's called negative pressure or vacuum technology.
Negative pressure. When I think of a fluid system, I think of pressure pushing out. Why would you want a vacuum?
And this is the aha moment. If the loop was under positive pressure, any small leak, say a fitting that's not quite tight,
It sprays everywhere.
it sprays everywhere, exactly what you're afraid of. But by keeping that secondary loop under negative pressure, if a minor leak happens at a connection, the pressure difference means air is drawn into the system.
Instead of coolant spraying out.
Exactly. Air gets sucked in, coolant stays put.
Wow, that is truly elegant engineering. You're turning a potential flood into, what, a minor air ingestion problem?
Precisely. It turns a potential crisis into a manageable maintenance issue. It dramatically enhances safety and minimizes downtime.
Okay, so we've got hardware that's fast, secure, and safe. The next big challenge for any enterprise is managing the entire fleet, right? Especially with mixed generations, say older Gen 10 servers alongside new Gen 11s.
A very common scenario.
So if an admin wants to move away from deploying expensive on-prem management appliances, what's the modern cloud-based platform for that?
They need to shift to HPE GreenLake for compute ops management. This is really the key strategic move away from that legacy way of doing things.
So managing servers from the cloud, how does that simplify life for an admin with, a globally dispersed mixed fleet?
The benefit is centralization and simplification. Because it's a cloud-based SaaS platform, you get unified management for everything. Lifecycle ops, monitoring, firmware, across all those different generations.
Gen 10, Gen 11, all in one place.
All in one place. And you don't need any local appliances to install or maintain at each site. It just transforms server management into a service you access from the cloud.
That sounds like a huge shift. Speaking of which, consistency is king in HPC. Every server needs the identical configuration BIOS, firmware, network settings, everything.
Everything has to match.
If a server fails and you physically replace it, how do you guarantee that the replacement automatically gets the exact same standardized configuration?
Okay.
What's the mechanism in HPE OneView for that?
The mechanism is the server profile template.
Okay.
These templates define the entire standardized configuration stack.
Templates are great for setup, sure, but what makes them so powerful for recovery?
The genius is that the profile template can be decoupled from the physical hardware.
Ah, I see.
So when you attach it to a server, it provisions it perfectly. When that server fails, you just apply the existing profile to the new replacement hardware. It guarantees consistent provisioning and automatic replication. It just eliminates human error.
So you're basically treating the hardware as disposable because the intelligence lives in that software template. That's resilience through standardization.
Exactly.
And just quickly, zooming out to large-scale OS provisioning tools like HPE Performance Cluster Manager, in that world, which component is the central authority that holds and distributes all the OS images?
That role belongs exclusively to the leader node. It maintains the master repository of all the validated OS images and pushes them out to the compute nodes. It's the single source of truth for the entire cluster.
Time to talk data. storage for AI and analytics. The needs are massive. But growth in capacity doesn't always match the growth in performance needs.
Not at all. You need flexibility.
So what's the fundamental architecture behind HPE GreenLake for file storage that lets you scale performance and capacity independently of each other?
That architecture is called DACE, Disaggregated Shared Everything Architecture.
DACE. Okay, break that down for me. What's being disaggregated?
So think about it like this. Traditional storage ties the compute and the storage together in one fixed box. DACE completely separates the compute layer, the part that handles the file system logic and metadata, from the persistent storage layer where the data actually sit.
Okay, so you have two separate pools you can grow.
Exactly. This separation lets you add more compute power, so more performance, without having to buy more physical disks. Or you can add more capacity without scaling up the expensive compute nodes. It's optimized for those big scale-out file workloads.
That's a powerful way to be more efficient. But scaling these huge systems introduces new ways for things to fail.
It does.
Let's talk resilience in the HPE Cray Cluster Store E1000 system. It uses the Lustre file system. What happens if one physical component, say a scalable storage unit, an SSU, just loses power? Does the whole thing crash?
Thankfully, no. The architecture is designed for resiliency. The Lustre file system itself stays active across all the surviving components.
But something must happen.
Something does. The specific data stripes that were stored on that one affected SSU become temporarily unavailable.
So you experience a degradation, a partial loss of access, but not a catastrophic shutdown of the whole system.
Precisely. It's a design choice that prioritizes overall cluster availability. The failure is localized, which prevents the entire file system from going down.
That makes sense. Okay, our final insight. Modern workloads. Containerized AI. We know a lot of people want the absolute highest performance, which means skipping the hypervisor and running containers right on bare metal.
Get every last drop of performance.
So if you want to run a Kubernetes orchestrated workload on bare metal, but you still need enterprise-grade management, what's the integrated platform for that?
That solution is the Red Hat OpenShift container platform. It's fully supported on this kind of infrastructure.
And why is OpenShift the go-to platform for this specific bare metal case?
Because it provides the complete integrated stack. It's got the OS, the container runtime, the Kubernetes orchestration, and all the crucial storage integration, all certified to run directly on bare metal without a hypervisor.
So you get the performance gains without giving up the management.
Right. For high-performance AI, eliminating that hypervisor overhead is key, but you still need the enterprise-level management and security features. OpenShift delivers both.
We hope these insights arm you with the knowledge you need for your next big project. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive. We'll see you next time.